Chris Beard to Indiana is on all the hot boards, and all the hot take media are doing hot take things. But what's really going on? And we also talk about the LSU game, which is very big, actually, for the Ole Miss basketball team tonight.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Steven Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. He is Michael Katz from the Northeast Mississippi Tupelo Daily Journal. Michael, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm trying to figure out what the weather's trying to do here. I'm wearing a sweatshirt today. Sometimes it's really hot. I don't know, man. I'll never quite get used to the weather here changing as frequently as it does. You know, California was just, you knew what you were getting. It might be on fire, but you knew what the weather was going to be.
You know, the crazy thing is down where I am, everybody talks about July and August being obscenely hot in Florida and talking in September, but they don't talk about the other 9 months being unbelievably comfortable. And winter in Florida, I don't know if I would rather winter anywhere else. I get it. The snowbird thing, I get it being down here.
Yeah, no, it's again, there's worse problems to have than it being like 60 degrees. It's quite lovely.
Yes, it's pretty good. Anyway, Ole Miss is set up after a homestand that they won 2 out of 3 games and looked unbelievably impressive, especially for a half against Kentucky. And going to LSU this weekend is starting a 4-game set that's kind of crucial for Ole Miss's season. If Ole Miss can pull off these 4 games that they probably should be favored in, if they can pull all that out, they're 10-4. Everything's punched to the NCAA tournament, and all of a sudden you're talking, hey, can this team make a 3 seed?
Yeah, I think I saw Lenardi today had him as a 4 or 5. I mean, they're in a really good spot. You know, that game against Kentucky, I know Chris Beard wasn't super happy with the second half defense, and obviously you play a little bit different when you're up 27 or whatever it was. But when Ole Miss is hitting threes the way they were early in that game, they're going to be really hard to beat. Like when they are shooting well from deep and defending like they did. What the hell? Kentucky had 31 points in the first half. That's the number 3 scoring offense in America. I mean, that's as good as a half of basketball as I've seen. And obviously, you know, it got. I don't want to say close. It was never within single digits. But you know, start to finish, that was really impressive. You know, you look at these next 2. It's LSU and South Carolina, correct?
Yeah, LSU and then South Carolina, and then home against Mississippi State.
Yeah, so you know those 2 road games, obviously those look like wins. I know winning on the road is hard in the SEC, but if you're looking at the teams themselves, South Carolina's had a rough go of it. And LSU is, you know, LSU's better, but you know they are not. If we're just looking, if we're basing on which team passes the eyeball test of being better, Ole Miss is clearly ahead. And then that game against State, you know, that was a crazy one last time in Starkville where they get behind early and Murrell ties it at the buzzer or right before the buzzer and it goes to overtime. And that's a game that they very well could have had, and that would have helped the resume too. But you know, you have to imagine that coming back here with the way the crowds have been here. I mean, it's been amazing. The pavilion's been amazing, just in terms of atmosphere. It's going to be turned up to 100 with State coming here. I imagine that's going to be a pretty intense game, and I think with the way that last game went at State, losing just a heartbreaker in a game that you know they feel like they probably should have never been that far behind in. You have to imagine this one's going to feel pretty important for them.
Yeah, and my general rule for Mississippi State, the Mississippi State game, is Mississippi State wins the game in Starkville, Ole Miss wins the game in Oxford, no matter how good the teams are.
No, I mean, at the very least, even when State is significantly better, it's always close in Oxford. And this is not a State team that is significantly better, to say the least. This is going to be a really fun matchup. I'm excited for that one. The game in Starkville, that was my first time at the Hump. It was pretty electric. I imagine the Ole Miss fans will return the favor here.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to see college basketball in Mississippi be at this level, because the game against Mississippi State and Starkville is the first time these two teams have met ranked. And there's a chance that they'll meet ranked again whenever the next time they come through and get it done. But it's nice to see this high level of college basketball being played in Mississippi.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just goes to show like it's possible here, right? Like you can bring in, you can have a strong program that, I know financials are weird and not many programs make a ton of money off, their basketball programs, but basketball can be profitable in Mississippi, I think. And I think it's really close to being that way, at least for Ole Miss. This is last year, the crowds were good. The crowds are great this year. And you have to imagine if they keep winning and, things progress with the program, they're going to keep selling that place out. So, I mean, my first few years here, I'm going to be honest, it was not impressive collections of crowds. It was weird. It just kind of felt very ho-hum. But seeing, the people camped out outside way before games and seeing lines to get into the pavilion, that's not something I saw in my first couple years here. So I think it's good for college basketball when Ole Miss and State and all these other teams that have kind of been sleeping. And State's not really a sleeping giant, but Ole Miss has kind of been a sleeping giant. When they start to awaken, I think it's good for college basketball.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing in the state of Mississippi. Content for basketball and for baseball, anything other than football, is significantly less. I mean, there's a cliff. There's more of a cliff than other places. But this year, it went from a situation to where my basketball reaction videos were getting 300 to 400 views to now it's getting 1,000 views, 1,100, 1,200 views, which lets me know that they're at least starting to really pay attention. Now, it's not going to be what football was. I was getting 5,000 views on a football video, but it is enough to where I can justify actually doing like these reaction videos. And that's just a testament of what Keith Carter and Chris Beard and everybody's doing at Ole Miss.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people who gets to games really early because I'm insane. And also I like to get dinner. I like to be first in line for the dinner. But like, their student section's already almost full when I get there, and that's like an hour and a half, 2 hours before the game. I mean, it's pretty impressive how far this thing has come in less than 2 full years.
Whenever I was a student at Ole Miss, there was the last time that it kind of started to get this way. I was there in 97 and 98, so that would have been Rob Evans and I was in school for the Valpo game. But the games in the Tad Smith, they would do these streamers off of the top of the scoreboard in Tad Smith, and Colonel Reb at that point would rappel down from the top of the Coliseum down to the floor. The players would walk through the student section, and that was the first time that I was like, hey, if they really took basketball seriously, they could have a lot of fun doing this. And I think we're starting to see that kind of direction again with this basketball program.
Regardless, I'm in complete favor of spelunking mascots. That sounds incredible.
Yes. And I'm sitting here going, man, there's so many things that can go wrong with that, but he did it. And it was, the students loved it and everything. I mean, Dick Vitale, there's a big game in 97, I think it was, against Kentucky in Tad Smith. Dick Vitale was calling the game. It was kind of the first Ole Miss arrival moment in basketball. And Keith Carter went out there and hit like 2 threes to start the game, and it was over at that point. And I had such a good time. We stormed the court the whole 9 yards. Vitale shooting free throws at halftime, all of that good stuff. Yeah, it was pretty fantastic. And the basketball that's going on right now is really reminiscent. So Ole Miss takes on LSU tonight. LSU has lost Ole Miss already this season. It's a game that Ole Miss did not get washed off the boards early in the season as well. So that's good news, because I think that the Achilles heel on this team will be anybody that can super athletic get on the boards.
Yeah.
That's going to be the separator.
Yeah. And it's been, it's not so much if Ole Miss can win the rebounding battle. It's just like, can they keep it close? Because they can make up for it in other ways if it's close. But it was really evident in games like, I know that A&M game was kind of shocking, but it was offensive rebounding. It's like it's getting second when other teams can get second chances and can take advantage. Because when Ole Miss's defense is doing what it does, and you're not getting separate second shot opportunities, they're in a pretty good place. They got to feel pretty good about things. So Yeah, and again, I know that road games, SEC, you never want to take them for granted. And Ole Miss is probably feeling pretty good right now. And I know that there's a big game in a week. But I would have to think that this, if Ole Miss plays even halfway close to what it did against Kentucky, they should be a pretty they should, I don't want to say cruise, but they should come out with the dub.
All right, this morning on my main point that I put out on social media, I think this is the most important thing for Ole Miss of the day. Ole Miss has to handle the success of that Kentucky game, because the last time they beat Alabama, they felt really good about themselves and went on to lose 3 straight games. This game is not a must win. It's not a must win, but it's a need to win, because you need to stack victories and get that good feeling that you had against Kentucky and keep it going against LSU and get ready for the South Carolina game, because there's a chance at the end of next week, Ole Miss is basically qualified for the NCAA tournament.
No, it's true. I think that you as much as you teams or coaches talk about how do you rebound from a loss, rebounding from a win is really important too. Like, you learn a lot about a team, how they handle what do you do after you get that, 15th win in 126 chances against Kentucky? These things haven't happened a lot for Ole Miss historically. So, I agree. I think, not a must win, but I think these 2 games against LSU and South Carolina are going to be kind of telling about where this program is at in terms of how seriously can we take them come March. Because, it's when you win games and everyone loves you, and when you win the ranked games, everything's great. But how do you handle the ho-hum games, the games that you're supposed to win, and you've got a big one right down the corner on Saturday? I think we're going to learn a lot about them these next 2. I don't think they shouldn't be problem games. These Ole Miss is a really, really, really good team. We saw that a couple days ago, but. We'll learn a lot about their focus and their headspace and where Chris Beard has this team sort of looking right now.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first and listen every day. When we come back with Michael, we will talk about the emergence of Dre Davis and Matt Murrell and what happens to this team whenever they really go off. And we'll also talk about the Chris Beard hot board stuff that has immediately come out with the Indiana job. You won't want to miss that as well. So the big game is almost here, just a day away, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks. It's the best way to play daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars of winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players. Projections. And if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. That's right. Prize Picks even has a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw for 1 yard to win. Pair that with 1 more correct pick and you're cashing out, man. Example, this week I'm looking at the board and selecting more for Travis Kelce on receiving yards and more for Jalen Hurts on passing yardage. Maybe it's the A.J. Brown thing and kind of rooting for the Eagles there. What I love most, fast, safe withdrawals. When I win, my cash is in my account in as little as 15 minutes. Check the promos tab for any of the super sweet Millie big game lineups. If you tell a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win a split of $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better ways to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook, whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even the betting on the coin toss or what color the Gatorade will be when it's dunked on the winning coaches. FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bet as the game unfolds and feel the thrill of kickoff until the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that is icing on the cake. Download the app and head to FanDuel to get started Bet just $5 and win $200 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, an official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, let's go back to Michael Katz talking about that. And I was sitting here watching that Kentucky game, and the first thing that went through my mind is I don't know what Ole Miss has against the state of Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, the whole thing. They just destroyed both of them. But in both games, you saw the emergence of Dre Davis. In both games, against Texas, you saw Dre Davis play pretty well. And when Matt Murrell and Dre Davis are playing really well, this Ole Miss basketball team is really, really tough to deal with.
Yeah, isn't it crazy that was Murrell's first 20-point game of the season? I know he's been going through a lot injury-wise, but I think he had 9 20-point games last year. I mean, it's crazy. They have not gotten what I think we expected out of him, and that's obviously out of not completely in his control with the injuries and whatnot. But he was sharp. When he's on, when he can sometimes fall in love with the three, but when the three is going, you fall in love with it. You keep shooting. He's gotten so much better with the shot selection over the years, and I think we're seeing that still. He for the first time in a while he looked comfortable and explosive. Dre Davis is interesting because the length. It's not just he's a good scorer. We know that, but I think his length is really big on defense too. Ole Miss loves to have the positionless basketball sort of thing. When you've got a guy who's 6'6" and is long and can defend, I think it's huge. And of course, when he's making his mid-range jumpers, when he's going. And Matt Murrell is going, and Juju's going, and everybody is sort of clicking on all cylinders. They're hard to beat again. Like when they are hitting threes the way, and of course, you're not always going to be able to depend on the 3-point basket. That's just unless you're the Golden State Warriors of 2016 or 50, whatever it was. It's a hard way to live for the most part, especially come tournament time. But when you've got a lot of guys who can score 15, 16 a game. They're tough. It's really tough to beat. And I don't think I understood how much Dre Davis means to this team until he came back. I think, when he was out for, it was at least a game, you're watching it and you're like, something seems a little off. And then he comes back and you're like, okay, it kind of does make sense, that sort of presence. So, when those guys are, listen, if you're going to have them emerge and start playing their best basketball, no better time than February and March.
Yes. And let's turn the page right quick before I let you go today. I think it was reported by ESPN, but really everywhere. Mike Woodson at Indiana is stepping down at the end of the year. And immediately everybody started dropping hot boards of Chris Beard. And we saw terrific hot takes, Michael, to where they're talked about, hey, he coached with Bobby Knight. So obviously Chris Beard wants to go to Indiana. And I'm like, really? Do you not research this at all? There is no connection between Indiana and Chris Beard. There's connection between Chris Beard and Bobby Knight, but his connection with Bobby Knight was probably Bobby Knight trashing Indiana at that point on a daily basis because they were not friends. They were not buddy-buddy with Indiana at that point. So basically, Michael, everybody that writes an article and you see on there is like, he could go to Indiana because of Bob Knight. At that point right there, I was like, okay, you're just absolutely guessing and you have no idea exactly what you're talking about.
I mean, it's the easy connection, and I think that, as you know, sometimes the easiest connection is the one people go to because it's like, okay, let's get the headlines going, let's get some clickbait going. We talked about it a little bit before the show started, but the reason people think that Indiana could hire Chris Beard is because Indiana is one of the best jobs in the country, and Chris Beard is one of the top 10 coaches in college basketball. Like that's why, the Bobby Knight stuff. That's great. It doesn't, again, Chris Beard does not have a connection to Indiana. He had the connection to Bobby Knight at Texas Tech. He's obviously already been at Texas Tech. That connection is what it is. I think that if, and whenever premier jobs come open, you look for premier coaches, and Chris Beard is one of the best coaches in the country. There's no question. So I think that the Bobby Knight angle is, and we're gonna keep seeing it. That's just the way it goes. It's going to be overplayed a lot. Listen, if Indiana makes a move for Chris Beard, it's not going to be because of Bobby Knight. It's going to be because he is one of the best program builders in the country, and I don't think anybody can deny that.
Yeah, it's one of those situations. You have potentially the best college basketball coach at the University of Mississippi. Everybody is going to want that. And the national media that doesn't really pay attention to what's going on at Ole Miss, they're going to assume you can get him. And he's obviously trying to get out of Mississippi.
No, of course. Again, if you don't follow closely, you just imagine that this is like the springboard stepping stone thing. But I think that over the last few years in a lot of different sports, Ole Miss is sort of trying to prove that this isn't the stepping stone gig that it was anymore. This is where you can win. You can win consistently in pretty much any sport. So it's going to be nauseating for the next few months for sure. And again, it does tend to be national media, people who aren't as maybe dialed into the day to day. But again, that's their job. It's what they do. They report what they hear. But I agree. If Indiana is going to make a move for Chris Beard in the next few months, it's not going to be because of the Bobby Knight connection. It's going to be because he's a hell of a basketball coach.
Yeah, and for Ole Miss fans that might be nervous about it, I got 4 DMs within that story coming out. It's like, is he going to Indiana? I was like, calm down. When you have that situation, first of all, Arkansas made a real run at Chris Beard last year, and Ole Miss fought off Arkansas. And Arkansas is probably the second best job in the SEC for basketball. I mean, they are really high on that. Just see what they did with Calipari. And the second thing is, Ole Miss fans really don't need to pay attention to this until Jeff Goodman tweets it.
Fair on all counts. Fair on all counts.
Yeah, that's the point where you should really start paying attention. Until then, it's all just subscription sites going to the dark side, trying to fill content by making hot boards.
It's classic February.
Yes, it absolutely is. But anyway, Michael, what do you got going on at the Daily Journal this week?
Well, obviously, the game at LSU this weekend, we're going to be on top of that. Obviously, there's a pretty big Ole Miss guy playing in the Super Bowl this weekend, so I know a lot of people would be pretty stoked if AJ Brown can get that. That would probably be that'd be a pretty cool story.
And by benefit, the Chiefs lose.
Well, yes, I think everybody wins that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then crazy week, we got baseball next week.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell? How is it already here?
Yeah, I think Chris Phillips from SEC Unfiltered is actually going to be in Arlington for that series. So he'd be a good follow if anybody's interested.
Yeah, we got baseball media days on Tuesday, and then they play. I think is it Arizona? I think their first game on Friday, and it's just like, man, what a perfect Valentine's Day. Ole Miss baseball. Let's go.
And pitchers and catchers report for the Dodgers Sunday before the Super Bowl. And for the normal teams like the Detroit Tigers on the 12th. So I'm excited. But this is the first time maybe in my lifetime that baseball season technically started before football season ended.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely nuts. Anyway, thank you very much for coming on the show. We'll talk to you later, bud.
Appreciate you, man.